Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Film Mandate, episode 13. Today we are doing something different. This is an episode I would call a very special one because I'm not doing the two stories as usual because this very story would extend beyond the allotted time I would give to one story within a two-story episode. So I decided to stick to just one story today. And this story is none other than an excerpt of an interview that Dr. John Apea, famous for his presence and participation in the production Run Baby Run, which was the movie, and also by Revel Films, if I may remember, together with his brother Emmanuel Apea, and the series Home Sweet Home. He was interviewed on the podcast called Konnected Minds. For those who haven't watched it, you can go on YouTube and check Konnected Minds by the wonderful host Derrick Abaitey. This gentleman has brought in the some inspiring speakers who speak on issues concerning mindset changes and then personal growth. It's really been a wonderful podcast, and I've been enjoying it. So you can go and check it out. I don't know him personally. I don't. He's not asked me to do any representation whatsoever, but I have been benefiting tremendously from his episode, and I thought, listen, you could go watch it because I'm taking this very excerpt from his episode, and he needs all the commendation possible. And I'm so blessed to have listened and watched a number of his episodes. So today we'll be talking about an interview he did with John Apia. For those who have been watching my channel, I did a brief excerpt concerning an interview that John Apia granted on one of the TV stations, and I thought I could follow it up with this because he speaks about the film industry, which it seems he loves so much, and then he raised some important issues that I thought that we could talk about because it did indeed because of his experience in the industry and currently his upgrade and perspective in life, he really understands the fabric of the industry and shed some light concerning what happened then. And I thought, listen, it's something we're talking about. So let me just bring it up and then we can delve into it afterwards. So
rather trained, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts trained in the 60s. We've had a lot of talent that we have not used, that policies and government initiatives and incentives have not supported. So the structures are not there. If the structures are not there, how do you expect people to make money? Until Silverbird came with Run Baby Run, we had to actually rent the National Theatre and turn it to a cinema. Bring your own screens and everything to be able to do the premiere of Run Baby Run. Because at that time, Silverbird wasn't there. So the film TV industry is where you have to build your own structures to be able to now build those rails that you can make money from. Dangote's refinery that he's developed in Nigeria, he had to build his own side of the port and build his own roads to be able to transport some of the equipment.
What a challenge.
The equipment were too big for the normal ports. They were too heavy for the normal roads. So in Africa, you have to build your own rails and then get your own revenues. How are the actors and musicians supposed to do that? Musicians, outside you have Billboard 100, you have in UK, you had top of the charts. You have a mechanism through which to make money. Here, it's all over the place. So of course they are not making money. You have amazing young actors like Majid. These guys should be in Hollywood. What avenue do they have?
Because we just spoke about TT. Before the guy passed, he was on social media. And I usually talk about this on this podcast that, well, the systems may not be there. But you've changed, you've reinvented yourself so many times to be who you
Yes, so let me pause it here. There is a lot more he espoused in the down the line in the interview, but I thought I could with a few pointers, and then I would also bring up what he said in down the interview. I will leave the link in the description below so that you can check out the entire interview for yourself. But then he raised very important issues. Then, regardless of how some of them were training, at the very beginning of the interview, you heard him talk about some of the some actors were Royal Academy trained actors, and he was making reference to Mr. Buckner and Mr. Dadzi of memory. May their souls rest in peace. And they have trained in the UK. I think this very Royal Arts Academy is where Lupita Nyong'o trained as well, and among other prominent filmmakers who are working today, even in the Hollywood industry. So he made mention of these people, and then the fact that even they were trained at this very prestigious academy, their presence here was something great to witness, especially on the screens. But the industry as a whole did less to elevate their talents for the entire world to see. So he spoke about unavailable structures, which indeed exist even till today. Granted, things have improved compared to the times some of these legends existed, but it is still not enough considering the fact that a number of the structures that exist today are only situated in just some pockets in the cities, not to speak of having enough that runs through the entire country. So if you look at what America has today, yes, I know somebody may be watching right now and say, why do you compare yourself to a developed country that has it all? Yes, they might have started somewhere, but then the structures existed. And one of the structures that exists is the infrastructure that helps sustain the industry. And at least for this to be sustainable, avenues for exhibiting this the films that we produce, or even the various network of television stations, pardon me, that exist, must be well networked throughout the country for such maximum growth or profit to be made when movies are released, in terms of the industry we find ourselves in. So if you take a critical look at the industry we have right now, cinemas are scanty. You have the silver bed, which asset today is the known, it's the only cinema chain that exists, which I doubt that they are more than 10 in numbers in terms of the multiplexes that they have. So it is a problem. He mentioned the fact that when they released the film Run Baby Run, because there were non-existent theaters, they had to rent the National Theatre and set up the place or fit the place just to be able to screen their movies. And this is not the first time, and that wasn't just the only time that such a thing had to be done. Even as it stands now, films of such nature that has to be released because you want a grand opening, and maybe the silver bed may not be enough. Other avenues or venues are also used to in order to be able to have a wider network of avenues or venues to stream or show your films. And that is something that is problematic for the filmmaker, because after having shot your film, you will definitely now have to go the extra mile to get that done. That is not to say that it is not done in other countries as well, but then you would have to spend more just to convert a venue which was not purposely fitted for cinema, just to get the place ready to screen or to show your films. And that is quite a challenge, because then, as a filmmaker, you would have to spend extra to get that done. So, yes, the unavailable structures is really a challenge. And this doesn't just happen in our industry, but because we are talking about films and television, that's why we are only focused on what the industry we find ourselves in. One example of a filmmaker that does that a lot is Kobe Rana. Kobe Rana releases films usually within the Valentine season, and he has to have several venues across the country to exhibit his films, which is a good initiative. But then, because of the extra mile he has to go through, there may not even be enough funding or money to do intense publicity to bring in enough people. Yes, he does enough publicity to help, but a lot more could have been done with the funding had the structures existed. Had the structures existed. And that is really a challenge. I remember back then, Cause of Money also had to do a similar setup at National Theatre to exhibit the film. And same with the Queba and a lot of other films as well. It's not just that, but another filmmakers does do same in different parts of the country. So there is the need for the infrastructure to be put in place. Just as I've been saying, it looks like the challenge we are facing, you can categorize the problem to the perhaps the non-existence of these factors: data, infrastructure, and policy. So all these things, without it being in place, our industry is still going to suffer, and it's not going to grow the way we want. The film industry, I would say, is one of the most lucrative industry anywhere in the world, because people love stories and people want to watch themselves on screen. They may not be the ones on screen acting, but whoever is acting, one way or the other, you get to relate to those stories on screen, and that is what keep people going. So this is really a challenge. So one of the non-existent structures I would always keep hammering on is data. Dr. John Apea mentioned the fact that when you go to the UK and the US, particularly even with the music industry, they have the top of the charts in the UK and also a Billboard 100. Not only that, in all these countries, they have box office charts where you know which movies are leading in the box office sales, or in terms of the wide releases and all that. I remember one of the episodes I did, I exhibited, I think on Monday, I showed the top 10 films on the box office charts internationally, or I think North America. And those things don't exist in this country. Why? Because there isn't even the necessary structures to help put a hand or a tab on the films that are being released, the number of people that watch, ticket sales, and all that. So it's really a bigger problem that we are not paying attention to. I hope with the existence of the NFA and other bodies, then they may be able to help put some structure in place to help with the industry. Because just as I keep stressing, investors won't come if there is no data to prove that this industry is viable. Some investors may come in because perhaps they already have a foray in the industry and understands how it works. But then uh, for an investor who has no idea of the industry and may want to put some funding into it, they are likely not to be confident enough to want to invest. And that is the challenge we have. He also spoke about Majid and others in the, I mean, other actors. And I dare say not just those in front of the camera, but those behind the camera as well. A lot of the opportunities some actors get to act in foreign films are because they had to labor just to get that opportunity of appearing in just perhaps even just a cameo. We know of our own Abraham Atta, who was discovered by Mauko of MK Casting and had the opportunity to star in the film Beast of No Nation. It was as a result of a foreign production coming here in Ghana that granted him the opportunity to appear in the Marvel's film Spider-Man Homecoming. That's the very first offering in the MCU universe with regards to the Spider-Man franchise. And if this opportunity of a foreign film hadn't come, this wouldn't have happened. So you see the talented Majid Michel, and then you have Ajiti Anand, the Liga Forces, and all others. They might have appeared in a film or two outside the country, but it hasn't still given them the prominence that other filmmakers in other countries get to show up in Hollywood films. Particularly, you have the UK, you have some from South Africa with the Charlize Theron. I may not understand the entire process by which they got these opportunities, but then our industry doesn't give enough elevation or visibility to these talents, both in front and behind the camera, to show up in these projects. And this is quite worrying, and it's something worth talking about. Piracy has been an issue. If you watch to the latter parts of that section that he spoke about the film industry, he said that they advertised the film for about 3 months, and then when they started screening them in the National Theatre, apparently at the same time, someone in Kumasi thereabout or in the Ashanti region was selling copies of the films, even when it was not done with its theatrical run. And that is a problem. Piracy has been a challenge for our industry, so much so that there is no way you can make your money back decently. You know, as a filmmaker, the screening window, the airing window, the exhibition window is a time period to most often break even if you don't make profit. So usually you have about 3 weeks to break even or make back at least the exact amount. But what we forget is that sometimes when you invest an X amount of money in a film, making back the X amount on the box office chart, or yeah, the box office chart, does not necessarily have broken even, because here comes the case that the exhibitors have to recoup their cost, which may vary from 10 to 30% or perhaps more. So, meaning that you will need to make about twice that amount just to recoup the amount invested, let alone you need to make about 3 times the amount to think of breaking even or a profit, because the budgets most often don't account for the marketing cost. It doesn't account for the marketing cost. So, for piracy to be in the system and doesn't allow people to recoup their money after the screening window, it's a canker in the industry. Today, we don't sell DVDs again and CDs, but the other aspect, which good for us as an industry, is being kept. But back then, the challenge of some stations, TV stations in particular, showing Ghanaian films on television without the requisite permission of the producers was a problem. Nowadays, it's not a problem anymore, but there are still challenges here and there in terms of the amount of content of foreign productions being shown on television compared to that of local films or content being shown on television. I'm talking with regards to the films, and it's a challenge because without enough airplay being given to local productions, it lends itself for it not being attractive enough to entice audiences to go to cinema. The challenge even is that we don't have enough cinemas to even encourage people to go. because if you want to really go to cinema, the hot spots of cinemas are usually in Accra, Kumasi, and a couple of other capital cities. What about those who live way away from the capital cities? So that is quite a challenge. That's quite a challenge. So I like to show some information concerning how the structures of Hollywood exist and how it has helped them to build their industry. The challenge we have is that we don't seem to have enough existing structures and powerful institutions whose presence can help build these industries that is really needed to help support what ought to be done. So I don't know whether if you can see on your screens. Yeah. So this is something I got from Google that I thought I may share and read briefly. So this has to do with American film industry, and they highlighted certain things that perhaps we may want to consider for our own industry. So let me just read briefly. The American film industry, often referred to as Hollywood, is sustained by a complex web of structures. So this was what Dr. John Apea was talking about. And he said, and I continue, including major film studios, distribution networks, and the global market, with the big five studios, Disney, Universal, Sony Pictures, Paramount, and Warner Brothers, playing a dominant role. Here's a more detailed breakdown of the structures that sustain the American film industry. One, major film studios. The big five and other majors. The the studios, Disney, Universal, Sony Pictures, Paramount, and Warner Brothers are sorry. Pardon me, I'm having a challenge seeing it clearly. Yeah, so let me just read from yeah. So the big five and little three, the industry is dominated by sorry, yeah. Yeah, so the big five and little three, the industry is dominated by a few large studios, historically known as the big five: MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, and RKO, which were fully integrated, controlling production, distribution, and exhibition. The little three, Universal, Columbia, and United Artists, were also major players, but they focused on production and distribution without owning significant theater chains. Modern Big Five today, the Big Five are Universal, Paramount Pictures, Warner Brothers, Walt Disney Studios, and Sony Pictures. Vertical integration. This model allows studios to control all aspects of the filmmaking process, from production to distribution and exhibition, maximizing profits and market share. Evolution of the model. While the traditional studio system with its own theaters is less common, the core principle of the vertical integration remains, with studios seeking to control as many parts of the value chain as possible, including digital distribution and streaming platforms. Two, global reach and international markets. American cinema's influence. The American film industry has a profound impact on cinema worldwide, shaping global perceptions and cultural landscapes. International distribution. The big five studios distribute hundreds of films annually into international markets where discretionary income is high enough for consumers to afford to see films. Global wood. Hollywood's expansion strategy extends beyond traditional exportation, with co-productions and local productions, enabling them to reach every segment of the audience. Globalization and localization. Hollywood's success lies in its ability to produce both international and local films, American or foreign, allowing them to transcend national boundaries. Other important structures. American film market. The American film market An annual event in Santa Monica is a major trade event for the motion picture industry, attracting participants from around the world. Independent filmmakers. The internet and digital distribution platforms have opened up new opportunities for independent filmmakers, allowing them to reach their target audience directly. Technological advancements. Digital technologies have revolutionized the film industry, impacting production, distribution, exhibition. Hollywood's economic power. The American film industry is a major economic engine, contributing significantly to the US economy. So, this is just but a few of the structures that the American film industry has built for themselves. The American film industry has built for themselves. The it may not be a perfect system, but it works. It works in that for those who are outside America as a country, when we see these films, our mind also goes to the fact that wow, this country's industry is a very thriving industry. Need to say that there are still filmmakers there who have their own challenges, perhaps even same as we may have here. But the industry as a whole, the front of the industry is well built and robust, that it makes it possible for America to explore their culture on such grand scale that other nations like ours may not be or may not be able to do. The challenge we have with our industry is that there isn't enough or giant studios as the big five which exist in America today. A lot of us are small companies, corporate pocket companies, so many of us. So there isn't the specialization of companies that are huge juggernauts that can help control the industry as it is. The If you take the TV industry as it exists today in Ghana, you have the the big giants like the TV3s, you have like the multimedias and other companies who are at the forefront of television in Ghana. Granted, if you are not in Ghana, you may assume that they are just a couple of TV stations that exist, but there are a number of them both on the digital satellite and digital platform, satellite and terrestrial platforms. So with these big giants of television stations who lead the pack, they're able to control the narrative in terms of programming. However, whichever programming they have in place, you realize that a number of these smaller stations, because they also want the share of the pie, may model their programming after these big TV stations in order to attract audiences. So if you look at what the American film industry have now, these big studios are vertically integrated such that they they cover the entire filmmaking supply chain, so to speak, from concept development to distribution in the cinemas and selling of merchandise. They are involved in all. Some have even gone to the parks to a extra mile where they have creative parks where people go to, like the Disney's have their parks where families can go and have fun. So they've gone just from beyond what is on screen, the silver screen, to merchandising and to even the hospitality industry, because some of these Disney parks and all have hospitality, they have hotels, they have restaurants, albeit not just something they own themselves, but other people also come to establish those small businesses to sustain the kind of level of hospitality they want to provide. So the problem we have is that there isn't enough big, I would say, film studios or industries to help show up the shocks of the industry that we find ourselves in. The existence of Africa, the film market, American film market, is also helping them. For us, at least, we have the Durban film market as a continent, and I believe other film markets exist in Africa. But the challenge is this: as a country, we also need to have our own film markets. We also need to have our own big studios. We also need to have our own structures that can sustain what we have here locally. That is so needed. It is so needed. There's a lot more to talk about it in terms of having enough technological equipments to sustain what we do here in the country. So it I like what Dr. John Apea was talking about, that without these structures, none of us can make enough money to sustain our craft. If you look at a number of the players in the industry getting to the latter part of their years, they had nothing. I mean, granted, everybody have to make their own life decisions to go by or to get by, but most had to live on the industry just to survive, because that is what they, for some of them, it is their calling, literally their calling. And in other places, they would have been billionaires, so to speak, because some of these filmmakers, actors in particular, they star in hundreds of movies, hundreds of movies. So if you realize in our industry, it got to a point that a lot of these actors had to pivot just to be TV personalities in order to sustain their brand and also give them a good economic value. And that is the challenge we face in our industry. It is a challenge. No existing structures, no data, no policy from government to help the industry, and no infrastructure. We have little to no infrastructure. So I really commend the Silverbirds and the other cinema chains and other institutions that are helping to build the industry, like the film festivals that exist, from the Accra Indie Film Festivals, from what GH Movie Freak is doing with the convention that he organizes annually. All these things need to exist, specializations and stuff, but they need the support to make this work. They need the structures to make this work. Well, this is where I'll bring my episode of today. That is the 12th episode of the Film Mandate to an end. I hope you learned something. And if you have differing opinions, or you agree with me, or you have a very different topic you want me to talk about, please kindly share that in the comment section below. There's a lot more we need to unpack about this industry and see how best collectively as a whole we can contribute our quota in making it work, because we all need to hear stories. We all need to hear our own stories being told on screen and accepted by the world. Thank you for joining me for this particular episode of the Film Mandate. I am Papa Otu, and I'll see you tomorrow.